So, you know that big defense pact between India and Russia that people have been talking about for years? Well, it's not just talk anymore. It's officially active. And believe me, this is way more than just some handshakes for the cameras. We're looking at a fundamental shift in military cooperation. So let's break down what's really going on here.
But here's the big question, right? Is this just another piece of diplomatic paper destined for a filing cabinet, or is it a genuine game changer on the world stage? To figure that out, we've got to look at what this agreement actually allows both countries to do. First up, let's talk boots on the ground. This pact gives each country the green light to station up to 3,000 troops on the other's soil, as long as everyone agrees, of course. Just think about that for a second. 3,000 troops. That is a serious commitment, opening the door for some incredibly deep joint training and operations. And it doesn't stop with soldiers. Nope. The agreement extends out to the high seas. It allows for the deployment of up to 5 warships in each other's ports and naval bases at any given time. That's a significant naval presence. And to round out the picture, there's air power. The deal clears the runway for up to 10 military aircraft to operate from each other's air bases. So when you put it all together, the troops, the ships, and the planes, you're looking at a military partnership that is deeply, deeply integrated.
But here's where it gets really interesting. See, a lot of these kinds of deals are just about sharing fuel and supplies. This is not that. This agreement goes right to the heart of actual military operations, creating a level of teamwork, of interoperability that we just haven't seen before between these two nations.
So what's the core mechanic? It's what's called a reciprocal deployment pact. Basically, you can think of it as them giving each other a set of keys to their military bases. They become friendly pit stops for supplies, for repairs, for refueling. But, and this is the crucial part, it's also a launch pad for deploying those troops, ships, and aircraft we just talked about. The whole idea is to make their militaries work together seamlessly, almost like a single unit, when they need to. Now, if you look at the fine print, you can tell they're playing the long game. It was signed last year and it just went live. It's set up for a 5-year term that just automatically renews, which shows you this is no short-term experiment. And here's the key safeguard. Everything, and I mean everything, runs on mutual consent. It's designed for things like joint exercises, disaster relief, maybe some anti-piracy stuff, but any use in actual combat, that requires a specific, explicit green light from both governments. So you might be wondering how this stacks up against India's big logistics deal with the United States, the one called Lima. Well, the difference is pretty stark. The US Pact is all about logistics, basically fuel and supplies. The Russian Pact adds that massive, crucial layer of troop deployment. It also sets clear limits on personnel, which LIMOA doesn't, and its strategic focus is on a totally different playground, Eurasia and the Arctic, versus the Indo-Pacific focus of the American agreement.
You know, this level of deep military integration doesn't just happen by accident. There has to be a pretty powerful motivation on both sides. To really understand this deal, you have to ask, what does each nation get out of it?
Let's start with New Delhi. From India's perspective, what are the biggest wins here?
For India, this is a massive strategic power-up. It unlocks access to Russia's Arctic ports and bases in Central Asia, projecting Indian influence far beyond its usual sphere. On a practical level, it streamlines military operations since so much of India's hardware is Russian-made to begin with. But maybe the biggest win of all, it's a powerful statement of strategic autonomy, proving India can maintain deep, independent ties with multiple world powers at the exact same time.
Okay, so that's India's side of the coin. What's in it for Moscow? Well, the benefits for Russia are just as significant.
For Russia, the biggest prize is direct strategic access to the Indian Ocean, one of the world's most critical waterways. This gives Moscow a powerful new pivot point to challenge Western naval influence in the region. It also helps break that sense of strategic isolation Russia has been feeling, giving it a powerful, non-Western partner in India. And, practically speaking, it delivers on a dream Russia has had for centuries: reliable, year-round access to warm water ports.
Now, a pact this big doesn't exist in a bubble. It creates ripples that change the global power dynamic in some subtle but very, very real ways. So what does that look like? For one, it sends a clear signal to China that the India-Russia relationship is rock solid, which keeps Moscow from becoming too dependent on Beijing. It also creates a powerful Eurasian counterweight to the whole US-led Indo-Pacific strategy. Ultimately, what you're seeing is a masterclass in what diplomats call a hedging strategy. It's about playing all sides to maximize your own freedom and influence.
When you zoom out, you see how this pact isn't really an outlier at all. It fits perfectly into India's long-term foreign policy. this delicate, deliberate balancing act on the world stage.
And this all comes down to one core idea: strategic autonomy. It's the principle that a nation shouldn't get locked into any single alliance, but should stay free to chase its own interests by building partnerships wherever and with whomever they make sense. This deal with Russia, coming at a time when India is also getting closer to the West, is the perfect example of that philosophy in action.
And all of this leaves us with a fascinating final question. In a world that seems to be splitting back into rigid blocks and camps, could India's model of multi-alignment, of being friends with rivals and partners with competitors, could that actually be the new blueprint for 21st century geopolitics?